You even wrote the Kickstarter for the independent creators in 2015, with a second edition in 2017. So with all that said, what do you think, if you were going to talk to a new creator, what is the one single most important piece of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, thank you. We're running a little down to the wire more than we usually do, just because Gwen got behind. As you can imagine, since she's taken over Boston Metaphysical, people have seen her work. She does a great job. So she's got a lot on her plate. Plus, this is a longer story than the previous ones. So, yeah, trying to get everything done in a timely fashion is a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
But she's awesome. But I love her. But it's like, be brilliant, but faster.
No, she's very awesome. And I think I had first seen her through working with you on Boston Metaphysical. So, no, it's awesome that she's finding other work and has her other things to do. And yeah, so coming down to the wire, that's always tough. You said it's going to be longer than your past books. Is it going to be a trade or a small or a graphic novel?
It's what we're now calling graphic novellas.
There you go. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's a 41-page story in a 48-page perfect bound book.
Oh, nice.
I just decided during the pandemic, I'm trying to keep this budget and this page count. My husband just looks at me and just goes like, just do whatever the story requires. And so I just opened it up, and I mean, it's better for it.
That's the beautiful thing of Kickstarter and as being independent creators and crowdfunding our own books, we can break the rules, right? You can make a 44 one-shot graphic novella, and no one's going to tell you it has to be X amount of pages. You can go out there and do what you want.
Yeah, and it's nice being able to, because I always try to stay on a budget, and I obviously recommend that to other people as well. But yes, pandemic be damned. Let's just do this story the way I want, and so I did.
Good. Oh, good. So you've had 7. I was looking earlier today. I mean, obviously, I've admired your work and I've studied your Kickstarter prowess and techniques. You're definitely one of the people who I looked at early on. I mean, I think since 2015, you've run 7 successful campaigns. You've raised close to 80 grand accumulated so far, and probably much more in the future. And even more importantly, I would think, is you've added a good number of backers after each campaign. Your number's growing, so people are staying on, and more people are coming on. You even wrote the Kickstarter for the independent creators in 2015, with a second edition in 2017. So, with all that said, what do you think, if you were going to talk to a new creator, what is the one single most important piece of advice that you would give them?
You mentioned I had 7 successful Kickstarters. My first one did the crash and burn, like a lot of people's do.
I noted that, and so did mine. And I wanted to ask you what. Maybe I'll just throw it in now. What do you think? Okay. I learn a lot through crashing and burning and failing.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people do. What did you take away from that?
Well, quite a number of things. I was brand new to Kickstarter. We had been just a web comic up until that time. We had, I don't remember the numbers now, but I mean, we had a decent enough views every week for the new pages to justify a launch. And my thinking back then was, okay, we self-funded 3 issues. Let's get funded for the next 3 issues, and let's just do the whole trade at once. It would actually be more economical for the backer to do it that way. But the goal was 25 grand, because that's what it would take to print and pay Emily and the colorists and everybody. We obviously didn't make that goal, but what we did see is that we had over 200 backers for, I mean, no one knew me from anybody, and we made over $7,000 or accumulated that. Obviously we didn't get that because we didn't make our original goal, but it gave us historical precedent of where we could start, of what was a realistic goal. And So at that point, and when I say we, I'm referring to my husband because he has to deal with me when I'm running these things. So, so we talk about it quite a bit. So we readjusted the strategy. So I would just be funding one issue, the print of number 3. That's it. And then we had a long range stretch goal to print number 4, and we did it. We relaunched. I have a whole letter. It's actually in the Kickstarter book, which I do update every year, by the way. I kind of sneak that in. It's this is updated 2020. Wow. After I run a Kickstarter, I go in and change what's changed. It's talk about what's changed.
So it's always evolving alongside you.
It's always evolving. And so we broke it up into smaller bits. Mm-hmm. And so we said, okay, instead of a $25,000 goal, let's just do a $3,000 goal and get this issue printed. That's it. We made our goal in 24 hours for the second run. So I said, okay, fortunately I had, stretch goals already in mind, but I was on my way back from work to calling my husband. I said, I think we need to add stretch goals now, and I have to figure out a number of what that's going to be. And then the rest was history. We just broke it up into smaller bits, and then eventually did a print run for the entire trade, and then started doing the sequels. But yeah, that was really hard that first time, not making it. But for your first time out, and no one knowing who you are, and you're getting over 200 backers, and people have plopped down over $7,000. Like, okay, we have something here, but we just need to strategize this better.
So how would you go about building a small fan base, I guess, before tackling? Like, would you start with, I guess you started with webcomic, releasing it slowly via webcomic. Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone can go ahead and do short stories, or really short stories, 4 pages, 8 pages, and just slowly trickle and release these things out. Social media, their own website. How did you release the webcomic? Was that through, I don't think Webtoons or Tapas were around.
They didn't exist then. Yeah. I had my own website, and so I did it through my own website. And the first few years, boy, that website was ugly. It was really ugly. But I didn't have the budget for a website developer. I just got onto, what was it, register.com, whatever it is. And it's called something else now, I think. And just put together something that looked okay. And then as we grew after a few years, a fan who was also had his own website company and an ISP offered to do it for a ridiculous low amount of money, but the back end was that I would host on his site, so he would make his money back in the long term. So that's exactly what I did, and everybody was happy. And so he redid it, and that's what you see now. I have a feeling that website's probably going to do the crash and burn at some point soon. So before the pandemic hit, my to-do list was, okay, it's time to redo the website, but with virtually no income coming in from cons, it just, that hit the back burner. But
if you see me looking down, I'm taking notes. I don't want you to think I'm rude and texting or anything. I'm just taking notes over here. I have my website. I utilize Squarespace, so I spend all the time and build it up myself. It's pretty intuitive and easy to use, because I know nothing about building websites.
Yeah.
But with that, it's click and drag and drop. It's pretty straightforward. So I would definitely recommend that if you were in the budget of doing it yourself.
Yeah, I actually use a Square store.
Okay.
So I've actually set that up, and it's linked to my regular website. But I locked down all the domain names and everything quite a while ago. And I can actually see sometimes every once in a while through the analytics that people are checking all the variations of the names, and it all redirects, of course, back And I'm just wondering, it's like, oh, is someone trying to wants my website name and thinks they're going to hijack it or something? I don't know, but
Yeah, I
it's
wonder
like
what they're what they're up to with looking for Boston Metaphysical.
it's like, yeah, what? Why would
Yeah.
you even do that?
So when you first started out, did you foresee the universe growing to where it is now, and did you see yourself sticking in there and growing the story universe and having what are you you're going to release you're going to do your fourth sequel on Kickstarter next month? Did
Yeah.
you see that in the beginning? Did you have these plans that early on?
No, no. The idea behind this is, if you don't know all this already, the comic, the original 6-issue miniseries, was originally written as a TV pilot when I was at UCLA Film School. And it had done well in competitions, but back then, and this was like, 2008, 2009, people, steampunk hadn't hit the mainstream yet. And period pieces are very expensive to produce. So it was suggested that I turn it into a graphic novel to essentially have part of a marketing kit to sell it back to Hollywood into film or TV. Well, the problem that happened over the years is that I began to really enjoy writing comics. And so, I just stuck with it, and it grew. I did a ton of cons my first 5 years. I mean, it's like every other weekend I was doing something. And that's how I built my fan base and my initial email list, is by doing all those cons. And I really enjoyed the community and the people. And then it was, quite a joy actually when you asked me to join the Fourth Monkey team. And that was a lot of fun. That was the first anthology I'd ever been part of.
But that was an adventure in and of itself, because I was asked to be one of the writers on that as well. And after spitballing back and forth with the original creator, I kind of jumped in to be a co-creator, and then going through everything, I started realizing that I was taking the lion's share of the work, which I didn't initially sign up for, but I think once I put my name on it, I was like, I can't back out and not do what I said I would do, so I have to just bite down and bite the bullet and keep going forward. But that was a learning experience. Your story was amazing on it. Was Ed? Did you link up with Ed Jimenez?
That was Ed. Yeah, that was Ed.
And he did the coloring and the pencils,
he did a great
and everything.
Job.
Yeah, he did amazing.
He did a great job. Yeah, absolutely. But but while we were in production for the 6-issue miniseries, which took 5 years to do, I started writing short stories, basically as companion pieces to it. And my idea was, okay, this is a great way to build canon for the world, and I could just throw these on Amazon as little short stories, and when I had enough of them, I could pull them together for an anthology and actually sell an anthology.
Nice.
And it was really interesting when I started doing this. Nobody else was doing that. I was actually interviewed on shows of like, you're writing short stories for your comics. No one else is doing that. And now you see it. It's much more common.
That's
now.
a great idea. I remember I had that idea back in the day, but it's a budgetary. It's an idea out of necessity, right? You had to utilize your budget to make short pieces in a larger world, because prior to Kickstarter, art for comics is expensive, and as the writer, you are, on the other hand, the financier for the most part, more often than not. So it can, it's an expensive art.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all prose stories, but as I started getting deeper and deeper into the world, I'm going like, this is a really interesting world. And I just started fleshing it out, and the characters, and there's all these ancillary characters that you'll get glimpses of. And then I just started writing, the novel prequel, which obviously is out now, A Storm of Secrets. And so you get to meet some of the people they talk about in the graphic novels, or where you get to see where they come from. and it's just been a lot of fun to just gradually build and enrich this whole universe. But people automatically think, oh, this is a novelization of the comic, and I'm going like, no, I don't repeat I'm not going to waste my time to repeat the same story. That's just not going to happen. I'm going to give you a new story where it's a complete story, but there's a linkage between it and the graphic novels. So it's like in the sequel, The Spirit of Rebellion, you meet, they go to Philadelphia and they meet a gentleman by the name of Samson, and it isn't, you get a hint of that he and Samuel knew each other back in the day. But then if you read Storm of Secrets, you discover he was like the head butler for his wife's house and looked at Samuel's wife as, his daughter. And then there's whole other
It's got to be so fun playing with that type of storytelling and planting a seed here where you'd have to see it grow to fruition or figure out where it was planted there. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And last year I finished up the first novel in a trilogy of what I call the House Wars, which is the Boston Metaphysical version of the American Civil War. And it happens, 35 years before the start of the first graphic novel. And even my editor has a good time because she did Storm of Secrets, and then she was editing the first book in this series, and then she says, oh, this is great. Now I know where this came from, what I read in the other one, and how that was built. And
that's always fun when you can blow your editor's mind with and trip them out on a topic like that.
Yeah.
And give them the aha moment. So how long have you been working with an editor from the beginning, or did you start to bring one on later in the process?
I did work with some editors for the short story and the novellas, though I think they all need to be re-edited again. Not that it was their fault, but I think it was my learning curve, I should say, and maybe lack of communication on both our parts. But for the novel, I wanted somebody who would take me to task, so to speak, and make me better. And I asked an author friend of mine her name's Shelley Adina. She does a bunch of, she's excellent. She does a very fun steampunk series called Lady of Devices. And I said, can you recommend? And she says, here's mine, but beware, she's expensive and she's not going to let you get away with anything. And I said, that's okay. As long as she's good, I don't care. And she used to be an editor at Hachette, so that works for me. But yeah, she makes me better, and that's all that matters.
That's very important, and that's something for, I think, especially new writers need to learn how to take take criticism. I think bringing on a writer might have been the best thing that I did when I did it. I mean, it helped me. Chaz Pangburn has been my editor and even editor for the most part since I brought him on for, I think, Wretches 2 when we were still on Kickstarter prior to it being picked up by Scout, and he wouldn't hold back. He would tell me if something was BS or didn't make sense, or if I didn't set it up properly. Like, he would really not hold any punches, and I loved it. I mean, it helped me grow and helped me learn what mistakes not to make, and it just overall just made me a better writer, I feel. So I would definitely recommend to anybody out there, that's one of the go-to moves, is if you can afford it. I mean, obviously we've been talking back and forth of utilizing Kickstarter to even get the book made, but if you have the opportunity, I would definitely take up an editor or even a close friend or another author who might take a crack at just reading the script before it goes into the art. And if you value their opinion and let them know that you want them to be honest with you, that is a huge step in the right direction and for overall growth, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of feel that everyone should go to film school in their life or you want to be a writer, just because you learn how to handle criticism. Because, I mean, I got used to having my ass handed to me on a regular basis in the MFA program. But
Would they do critiques? Would you
oh yeah,
annual or weekly or bi-weekly critiques?
Weekly.
Ooh.
Weekly. Yeah, whatever. If you were up, yeah, it was weekly.
You just get beat up every week. No problem.
Sometimes, yeah, you get used to it, and then you learn how to take notes and receive notes without getting your defenses up, and that's really important. For my comic scripts, I actually have, and actually for my novels too, I have beta readers, and they're excellent. They know the universe, and they keep me absolutely on track. I just remember when I was doing the Spirit of Rebellion sequel, and I sent it off to one of my first beta readers, and he came back with so many questions. I went like, okay, we need to start over here.
Those are good notes.
Those are good notes. I mean, because those are good questions, because it told me exactly that I hadn't broken the story yet. I hadn't really gotten to the heart of the story yet, and I was trying to do too much. And so that in itself is amazingly helpful. And so then I went back and did a complete page 1 rewrite, and then I have him reread it, and I had another reread it. I try to get both like male and female points of views on it. So yeah, I do that with all the scripts. They go through beta readers, and then I go through it. I mean, once the basic, paneling is done, people have asked me how many passes do you have? Do you do on a script? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't count them. There's so many.
Infinity? I mean,
infinity, yeah. However many it takes to get where it needs to be. That's how many you do. You don't count them. I think you'd go nuts if you actually counted them. But I know some people do, that's how they work and that's how they function. So great. If they can do that, fine. I can't.
No, I agree. Counting, I mean, I don't do a tremendous amount of script passes, but the brainstorming and the outlining phase, I mean, that part for me, it's months, if not years, while I'm doing other things, but the seeds are planted back then, and they might be bouncing around in my head here and there for years. And then once I finally get down and start writing the outline, that in and of itself I might do several passes on. And then the script, I'm writing something now. I just wrote the first several pages. I handwrite first is what I like to do. I like to handwrite because I feel like for me there's no interruption from the keyboard. I feel like if I'm typing it first and I can't quite flow, so if I screw something up or if I don't like it, I have to backspace or I have to copy and paste it if I want to move it to the beginning, whereas with pen and paper I can quickly scratch it off, write in between the margins, write little notes here, doodle, put a star, circle it, put the arrow to the top. Like I'm just flowing on the page. So I feel like that for me is just, I don't know, the flow, the stream of consciousness that kind of hits when I'm writing longhand is just, I mean, I love it. How do you prefer to write?
I don't do longhand just because my hands cramp up, after a while. I will do short writing sprints like that. And one of the things I did over the pandemic to remain sane is I started writing flash fiction. And so since that's obviously short, keep it under 1,000 words, just sit down and write something out. And it doesn't matter if it never sees the light of day. That's kind of irrelevant. But a lot of times, something comes out of that that I really like. And, it's nothing Boston Metaphysical related, but it's something else I may do in the future. But yeah, mostly I use the keyboard just because it's faster and easier for me.
Yeah.
Those social media is just a pain.
Oh, that's a whole different different bag of worms. It's just a necessary evil at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah, it's just
We'll edit
it's very,
that. We'll block that part out. We'll cut it out
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because we're here doing the business. But yeah, that's the business
Yeah.
side of it is trying to have daily posts, or content is king. So I personally
Yeah.
have just been trying to do. The other day, I actually do what artists do. I set my webcam down and I hand wrote a page of script, and it took about 45 minutes to handwrite it, and I sped it up. I think it was a 1 minute, or maybe it was a 30-second time lapse video, and I put it on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all that stuff. But it's these little things that we have to do, in the social media world, to create content and just steadily do this day after day, week after week. It is, quite honestly, as I said before, a necessary evil.
well, it's also
hate it.
it's also distracting from the creative process.
Oh, so
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
And yeah, I am considering getting one of those timers that basically shuts it off. Though in a couple of online writing conventions I've been either attending or been a part of, a couple of them, what do they call it? The Pomodoro method, where essentially you write for 25 minutes. I mean, everything else completely turned off, 25 minutes, and then you go for 5 to 10 minutes, you check email, you take a little walk, you pet the dog, and then you come back and you do another 25 minutes, and it's wash, repeat.
I've heard this, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be successful at that, but
Yeah.
I've heard that method. Right, you get it out of your system and quit, 5 minutes, scroll for 5 minutes, and get back to writing for whatever the time
Time is,
you've
yeah.
allotted yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you tried it? Did you say you tried it? I'm sorry.
I have not tried it yet. I mean, unfortunately, right now, since I'm in Kickstarter mode, the only
you're
things.
full. Yeah, you're full. You're in the matrix, and you've been there
Oh, yeah.
probably for a while, and you won't leave for another month or two. Yeah,
Yes.
you're in there.
Yes. I mean, the only breaks I will have is, I don't know if you saw, we're doing a Boston Metaphysical audio drama.
You told me.
Yes.
I didn't see,
That's
but
right.
you told
Oh, that's
me we
right.
were
Okay.
talking on Messenger. You did tell
That's
me.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Right,
please
I
tell
forgot.
me. So you're gonna have breaks to do that?
I kind of have to because, well, we have a production meeting this week, and we're casting for the leads, and we're into callbacks. So probably sometime in the middle of the Kickstarter, middle of April, we'll be listening to our callbacks and then deciding on our final cast while sending out additional casting notices for supporting characters. But yeah, that puppy's getting done. I'm just amazed. Just a little bit at a time, and we're getting some great actors. I'm just so happy.
Are you working with a production company, or do you have partners?
Yeah, I have brought on Eddie Louise and Chip Michael, who are the husband and wife team behind the audio drama Sage and Savant. They did it. They produced it for 6 years, so they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but they know what they're doing, and they're teaching me. So yeah, they're on board. She's on board as script editor and mentor, and Chip is doing the sound engineering and the composing. And yes, they are getting paid.
Wow.
So everybody's getting paid. I'm very fortunate in that I was a recipient of a California small business grant. So that will help get this party started, so to speak. I'll get the actors. Actors will get paid. They'll be
That's
happy.
amazing, and that's got to be a different type of collaboration.
Yes.
Do they? Okay, so So are you writing a script for it essentially, or
Yeah,
how?
yeah.
Okay.
I've had to learn how to write an audio drama. So I did research, and then that's Eddie Louise is my script editor, so she's fine tuning it and educating me on how to communicate to the actors, and then they're both she and Chip are talking about sound and music. So once again multiple passes over the scripts, like, okay, what's the emotion I want the actor to be showing here, or demonstrating in some fashion? Do we need any kind of urgent or dramatic or scary music here? What are we hearing? Is someone coming into the room? Is a door closing? Is, Granville playing with his electronics and blowing something up? I mean, what's going on? And so it's a very traditional audio drama, and which I think fits with the world of Boston Metaphysical. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
so I was going to say I could picture, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way as a comic writer you would write the panel, you would write it for the artist and try and inspire the artist into picturing somewhat what you're picturing, or what you want displayed in the panel. You would do that for the actor.
Yeah, and for the sound engineer. It's
right.
For both.
Okay, so you're writing. Okay.
Yeah, it's for both. So you set up a Bible where you describe all the rooms that you're going to be using for the entire series. And then when you first introduce the room, which is much like in regular screenwriting and script writing, you'll have, scene 2, interior, BMS office, and then you describe the office. And so that tells the sound engineer, okay, is it brick walls? Are they walking on a wooden floor, a cement floor?
Is it an empty room where their feet are echoing?
What kind of echoing? Is there furniture in the room?
Wow.
all those kinds of things. And
that
then
sounds fun.
It is, and it really wasn't, at least for me, it wasn't that much of an adjustment to make, and it's another skill.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Another project.
Yeah, another project.
Yeah,
keep growing the world out.
Yeah, in many ways. That has to be the most. Yeah, I think BMS has to be the most diverse project in forms. In ways you can receive it, especially once this audiobook is completed.
Well, yeah, because once it's done, we're going to run a Kickstarter for that in the fall. And when it's done, obviously it will go to the backers first. Mm-hmm. And then it'll be put on a platform for streaming. I don't know what platform that is yet. I don't need to make that decision right now, and I'm not going to.
No, don't think about it. Don't think about it. You have enough on your plate.
Yeah, it's not important right now. But yeah, then it'll be available for the general public, and obviously we'll be looking for sponsorships and things like that. But it's also a way of enlarging your market space.
Yeah.
Bringing people in who never, had never heard of you before, and wait a minute, there are graphic novels and a novel. Well, I like pretty pictures. Why don't I get that? So. Yeah.
If they're a fan of that, then.
Yeah.
They may be driven to your other work.
Yeah.
I was talking to it was on here. I think it was the Word Bros. I think it was Kevin Cuff and Bob France. I think we were talking about similar to that, having different platforms or different ways of people to find your work and come back. We were talking about that in the realm of small press publishers. The importance of a independent comic book writer to try and land your books in in multiple small press publishers, just for the benefit of, X publisher will have its own fans, B publisher will have its own fans. A bunch of them will interlap, but maybe not all of them. So trying to pitch your work to, around to other publishers will just help get more eyes. It'll help you network and build your brand across readerships.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was there anything specific, any specific work that got you into steampunk?
No, it was by accident. Boston Metaphysical Society started out as a standard period detective piece set in the late, I think it was called 1900 Detective Agency, and so it was going to be set in the 1900s in Boston. And a director friend of mine stopped me one day, and he said that I really think this would work well in a steampunk world. And I had heard of steampunk, but wasn't that familiar with it. So I did my research and realized he was absolutely right. So I redeveloped it, and it probably took me days to come up with the name, because I wanted a name where the words evoked the time period. And because they didn't call, they call things societies. What we call an agency now, they call a society or a club. And the term metaphysical has a very different usage now than it did back then. I mean, now it's more looked at like, a philosophy kind of thing. And back then it was like, oh, it's the paranormal and the supernatural. So, yeah, I must have... Yeah, that's when I was doing the longhand thing, a big, legal pad. I'm just writing down names and, okay, what do they call it here? And I had vocabulary from 1890 and just writing down all these words until it was like, I came up as like Boston Metaphysical Society.
Ding,
that's
ding, ding.
It. Ding, ding,
Yes.
ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that's it.
I got it.
Yeah. So that took some work.
What was your first comic book script? Was it, I think you might have hinted at it before or said it before when you finished film school, right? And you turned what was, I guess, would you say it was 1900s detective agency into Boston Metaphysical? Was that the first comic book script you wrote?
Well, I turned the TV pilot, what was 1900 detective agency, into Boston Metaphysical Society. And then, yes, Boston Metaphysical Society is the first comic that I wrote. And looking back on it now, I would highly recommend that if you're just
I love this question. I'm sorry. I love when I ask,
it's okay.
Because, no, I love asking because everyone has the same kind of, oh brother, this is it was a bad one. I might be putting words in your mouth. I don't know what you're going to say, but
I mean, it wasn't a bad decision, but it wasn't the best decision.
I should go back.
Yeah.
Not that it's going to be a bad story, but there are a lot of things that today we would do differently, and we see the mistakes that we made in our first scripts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was very fortunate in that I took sequential art classes, a number of them, while I was developing this script. So, I mean, I had people who knew what they were doing, looking over my shoulder and giving me critiques, which is, why it ended up as good as it did, the first time out. But knowing what I know now, I would have started with much shorter projects, like just doing a short story for an anthology or just something to get my feet wet to understand the process and the art form better. And so, yeah, I mean, that's because I look at the first 6 issues now, and no, they're not bad. I'm not going to say, like, don't go to my Kickstarts, no. Obviously, it's very good, or else, it wouldn't have been picked up by Source Point Press, and, and it wouldn't be out there in the world. But like all things, I look back on it and go like, this could have been tweaked here, or like this piece of dialogue could have been better here. But, it's locked now, so I'm not going to go back and change it.
Or you got to move on, otherwise you'll still be there writing it and trying to perfect it. Now, I think about my horror story of a first attempt at my first crack at comics. I was aiming to write a graphic novel. I think I probably wrote about 110 pages worth of it, and I linked up with an artist who ended up drawing, and a colorist who ended up coloring probably 40 to 50 pages of it before they disappeared, and it was never, it amounted to nothing, but I ended up printing those pages, and I have it in my closet over here, and I was looking at it the other day, and it's just the pacing, the storytelling, like there's good seeds and there's things that I can cannibalize and reuse elsewhere in the future, but overall, it wasn't that good. But you have to learn by doing it and by screwing it up, and that's, for me, that's the only way to learn.
Yeah, like I said, the reason that the first 6 issues came out as well as they did is because of the classes and the mentorship that I had going into it. And Emily was just out of art school, and it was pretty clear she was ready for prime time. And because when she finished the 6 issues, because I signed her for all 6 issues, and she got them all done, bless her heart. I mean, she's gone on to do storyboarding at Nickelodeon and Warner Brothers and a ton of stuff, and I'm very happy for her.
Yeah, it's an amazing first collaboration.
Yeah, she did. She was wonderful. She was wonderful.
Did you ever have was there ever kind of a moment where you thought about throwing in the towel and quitting or stopping writing comics?
Probably when it was obvious we were going to fail that first Kickstarter.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, that was pretty painful. But we knew
to fail with 200 plus backers, sorry to cut you off, you didn't reach your goal, right? You were a third or 2/3 short, but having 200 people out of the blue with no, as you mentioned before, no previous fan base, mailing list, or anything like that.
Yeah,
that's a good failure.
Yeah, no, it was good, and that was also the start of my mailing list. Is when because there was one thing I learned there is when it was obvious it was pretty obvious a week or two before we weren't going to make it, but a couple days before the end of that campaign we saw people dropping, and I know with Kickstarter, if they drop, you can never communicate to them again through Kickstarter. Obviously you don't get their emails or anything, so I canceled the project about 24 hours before it ended and wrote a big, long letter, explaining what was happening and thanking everyone and asking them to sign up to be notified when we launched again, and that it would only be about the Kickstarter, nothing else, just be about this. And that was the start of my email list. And I turned that and then grew it over the years. But yeah, I recommend that to other people too, is that even if they fail, do that nice little wrap-up letter thanking everybody and get their email. Ask them 3 times. In that last update, ask them 3 times to do it. Because that's like the magic number.
Please, pretty please.
Pretty
please with a cherry on top.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's something I definitely didn't do. I don't think I started building a mailing list until a few years back. I think I took Russell Nohelty up on one of his
viral
Facebook pages. Yeah, viral thing. I think one of the first ones he did, and that helped boost it. And then through COVID, I don't think I sent one, through 2020, I should say, as a whole, I didn't send one update or anything out. I just started about a month ago. I sent my first email out to the list. So I really need to work myself to get better at sending emails out and sending content out that folks are going to enjoy. How often do you send emails out to your mailing list?
I send newsletters out once a month.
You do monthly, okay.
I do monthly, but that's what I tell people when they sign up. It's once a month. It's a fun newsletter. I give you updates on what we're doing with Boston Metaphysical, the comic, or whatever's going on. And then I do reviews for fan-based comics, so I link the reviews, and then I find some kind of cool articles out there that I think people might be interested in. And if I've done any interviews, and then I do what's called newsletter swaps with other novelists. So towards the end, I'll go like, oh, you might want to check out these books here. And people have seemed to enjoy that because it's one of those kind of newsletters that, it's Thursday night, when we're all used to be at work, you pull up the email at work, you're going to be leaving in an hour or so. It's something you can look at, glance through in less than 5 minutes, and then if there's something that interests you later, you can always come back to it later. But if it's just like, oh, okay, here's the news, here's what's going on, okay, that's cool, and then, oh, that's that's an interesting comic that you reviewed. I'm going to go back to that later when I have more time. And then it's fine. But it just keeps people in touch that you're still, still alive out there.
I do remember seeing one of yours in the past, and I think the news article that you put in there didn't necessarily have anything to do with, let's say, steampunk. Like, it wasn't comic book related. It was just something that you found fascinating.
Yeah.
That you thought others would. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, my father gets it, and he'll go like, "Hey, I read this article about organic nanobots." And I'll go like, "Yeah, Dad, I sent that to you." And
but that really helps not cater, but I guess mold your mailing list, mold your audience, or the folks who might not enjoy it will leave, but the folks who will enjoy it will appreciate you that much more for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, it's fun things. They're not big, long articles, so they're not going to eat up a tremendous amount of your time, but it's just one of those things you're like, oh, that's cool. I read this article about they took frog stem cells and created organic nanobots. That's cool.
Yeah. No, I love that. I actually wrote that. I wrote that down.
That's a story right there. I mean, that's a story waiting to happen. Be. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then the nanobots take over and humans start turning amphibious because of that.
Well, unfortunately, right now, apparently the organic nanobots only last for like 10 minutes or something. They don't last very long.
Oh, but shit. The comics,
but
we
they
can
will.
Just,
But they will, eventually.
It's inevitable. I do want to wrap it up on a nice high note. I do have something. This isn't a high note. This isn't even. I've written down here, and the imposter syndrome. It's something that something that I've dealt with. Self-doubt. I haven't dealt with it much in the recent past, which may be a flat out lie. But have you ever dealt with that? And if so, I mean, how do you deal with it?
I think it doesn't happen very often. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I've had a lot of careers in my life. This is just one among many. And I've only been doing this for probably a total now of not quite 10 years that I was introduced to comics. So I consider myself a newbie. But yeah, whenever those little inklings of self-doubt kind of get into my head, I go to my Kickstarter page and I see 600 plus backers and over $17,000, and I go like, okay, move on.
I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. Move on. I clearly know what I'm doing. It's fine. And
That's
and
awesome.
I think what's even more flattering now, and I'm always surprised by it, is when I hear other people refer to me as their mentor. And I was like, I'm your mentor? I didn't know that. But yeah, for a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot, but some people, have referred to me as their mentor, and that's very flattering. And I do hope I have helped them in some way, whether it's personally or in their career. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But it's just, that always kind of surprises me when that happens. Maybe it should. Maybe it shouldn't, but yeah, it still does.
Well, that's got to be an amazing feeling. Like I mentioned in the beginning, you're definitely one of the people who I looked at and studied in the Kickstarter game early on, and helped me to since borrow and emulate different practices that you put together. So Madeleine, I appreciate you joining me and spending an hour with me. Where can people find you? Social media, your website, the Kickstarter you have going on? Let me know.
Yeah. www.bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com is our website. Facebook is Boston Metaphysical Society Comic. Twitter, M. Holly Rosing. That's MHOLLYROSING. And Instagram is MC Holly1. Though I kind of just use that for fun more than anything else.
I was going to say, I hope there's no rapper called MC Holly. that you might have to compete with.
Yeah. I don't think there is, but yeah, actually, that's the second time someone, that's a rapper name. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't really think about it. And then, of course, on Kickstarter, we will be live all of April. So please come down, check out the reward tiers, and pledge.